Genius and madness often share the same address. And if you look closely enough at the mind of Elon Musk, you can see both standing side by side, two forces locked in a quiet, relentless war. To the world, he is the man who builds rockets in his sleep, rewrites economies before breakfast, and tweets as if the future itself were a playground. But behind the spectacle lies something far more complex, a psyche consumed not by wealth, but by control. Control over machines, over time, over destiny, and, ultimately, over the fragile future of the human race. Musk doesn't dream the way others do. He engineers his dreams. Every vision, from colonizing Mars to merging the human brain with AI, is not fantasy, but architecture. His imagination is mechanical, his obsession systematic. He doesn't chase ideas, he builds inevitabilities. And that's what separates him from the ordinary visionary. For Musk, possibility is not enough, it must be conquered, reduced to function, made obedient. Even the future must submit to his will. To understand the psychology of Elon Musk, one must abandon the idea of him as a businessman or an inventor. Those are merely expressions of a deeper instinct, the instinct to transcend limitation. He isn't competing with other men, he's competing with mortality itself. In his universe, death is inefficiency, and emotion is interference. His intelligence is not cold by nature, it became cold by necessity. Because to carry the weight of entire civilizations in your head, you must first silence the parts of you that tremble. Musk's fixation with control began long before SpaceX or Tesla, it began in a childhood marked by isolation and chaos. South Africa in the 1970s was a world divided by violence and fear, and Musk grew up in a house ruled by intellect and instability. He retreated into books, into code, into the safety of imagination. While other children sought comfort, he sought escape, not from reality, but from the powerlessness it imposed. In the mind of that boy, the seeds of the man were already forming, the need to understand everything, because understanding meant safety. As he grew, that need turned into a mechanism, an emotional algorithm. Pain became data, and failure became calibration. He learned that control wasn't about domination, it was about prediction. If you could see what others couldn't, you could move before they did. And so Musk trained his mind not for happiness, but for foresight. Every loss, every humiliation, every impossible challenge became fuel. His psychology formed around one unbreakable rule: if the world won't make sense, I will rebuild it until it does. That's why Musk's brilliance feels less like inspiration and more like compulsion. He doesn't simply want to innovate, he must. His drive borders on the pathological, not because of greed, but because of an internal restlessness that never sleeps. He once said, "I don't ever give up." But what sounds like determination is, in truth, something darker, an inability to stop. Musk's mind is a perpetual engine, one that burns through emotion, sleep, and even relationships to keep functioning. It's not ambition, it's survival through creation. Every great visionary has a wound at the center of their genius, and Musk's wound is chaos. He fears disorder, not the kind outside, but the one that once lived inside him. That's why he builds systems, rockets, grids, algorithms, networks. Each one is an externalized attempt to impose harmony where none existed before. His companies are not businesses, they are extensions of his psyche. SpaceX represents transcendence, Tesla represents redemption, Neuralink represents control, not over others, but over the boundaries of human limitation itself. Yet there's a paradox buried deep in that control. For all his command over technology, Musk remains haunted by the one thing he cannot automate, the unpredictability of human emotion. It leaks through in his eyes, in his impulsive outbursts, in his cryptic humor online. The man who designs artificial intelligence still wrestles with the untamed intelligence within himself. And in those moments of raw exposure, the curtain drops, revealing the tension that defines him, the fear that he might not just be shaping the future, but becoming trapped by it. Musk's relationship with power is unlike that of any traditional tycoon. He doesn't seek it for status, he uses it as leverage against destiny. Power is his method of negotiation with the unknown. He looks at chaos the way a scientist looks at a dangerous chemical, not as something to destroy, but to transform. That's why failure doesn't break him, it recalibrates him. Each explosion at SpaceX, each financial crisis, each public backlash, all become test data for his resilience. He doesn't identify with failure or success. He identifies with process. But the cost of such a mind is detachment. Those who orbit Musk often speak of his intensity, his unpredictability, his tunnel vision. He moves between moments of brilliance and brutality, capable of inspiring entire industries and exhausting entire teams. It's not cruelty, it's compression. The pressure of an intelligence operating several dimensions ahead of everyone else leaves little space for empathy. Musk isn't unaware of emotion, he simply prioritizes scale over sentiment. The future of humanity, to him, outweighs the comfort of the individual. Even his own. There is a loneliness that comes with that kind of vision, a silence between thoughts too large to share. Musk often jokes about dying on Mars, but behind the humor lies a deeper longing, not to escape Earth, but to escape the limits of the human condition. His obsession with other planets, with neural networks, with artificial consciousness, all of it points to a single, aching question: what comes after us? It's not arrogance, it's existential grief disguised as ambition. He doesn't see the future as a timeline. He sees it as territory, unclaimed, unexplored, waiting to be colonized by willpower. In his universe, hesitation is death. And so he moves relentlessly forward, propelled by an invisible equation that no one else can see. For Musk, the apocalypse is not an end, it's an engineering problem waiting to be solved. But deep inside that relentless motion lies the true paradox of his psyche. The man who seeks to free humanity from its limits may one day become the most limited of all, trapped inside the machinery of his own perfection. Because what happens when the future no longer needs its architect? What becomes of the man who has built everything except peace? Obsession is not a trait in Elon Musk, it is his operating system. Every idea he touches becomes a vortex that consumes him completely, until the line between creator and creation dissolves. He doesn't pursue goals, he becomes them. That is the essence of his psychology, a fusion between man and mission so complete that the two are indistinguishable. To outsiders, it looks like genius. To those who look deeper, it begins to resemble possession. Musk doesn't simply imagine the future, he inhabits it. While the rest of the world debates possibilities, he behaves as though time itself were negotiable, as if the laws of physics and economics were merely bureaucratic delays in a plan already decided in his mind. He exists several steps ahead of consensus, driven not by faith but by calculation. For him, the impossible is just a problem that hasn't been reduced to engineering variables yet. And when reality resists, he doesn't adapt to it, he bends it. Psychologically, this kind of focus demands an extraordinary level of self-control. But control, when stretched to its limit, becomes its own form of chaos. Musk's mind is a paradox, a system that thrives on disorder while seeking to eliminate it. He needs friction to create movement. He provokes it, invites it, uses it as fuel. Conflict sharpens his attention. Doubt ignites his intellect. Opposition validates his purpose. Without resistance, he loses definition. This explains the volatility that follows him, the unpredictable outbursts, the strange humor, the unfiltered speech that shocks investors and fascinates the public. These are not accidents, they are pressure releases. The same intensity that allows him to build rockets and rewrite industries also builds emotional tension that must find an outlet. Musk's unpredictability is not weakness, it's a side effect of sustained overdrive. When the mind operates at such velocity, normal emotional rhythm becomes impossible. He once said that his mind is a storm of ideas, constantly colliding. That collision is what keeps him alive, and what isolates him from everyone else. Most people cannot live inside that storm. They visit it briefly through inspiration, he never leaves it. In Jungian terms, Musk lives in permanent confrontation with his Promethean archetype, the figure who steals fire from the gods to give it to humanity, only to be punished by the same creation he delivered. The fire burns endlessly, but it also consumes its bearer. What makes Musk particularly fascinating from a psychological standpoint is how he converts pain into propulsion. Every emotional setback becomes fuel. The collapse of relationships, public ridicule, exhaustion, all of it is metabolized into energy. He doesn't linger in grief, he mechanizes it. There's almost something inhuman in that transformation, a refusal to be slowed down by the ordinary vulnerabilities that govern most people. To him, emotion is not a destination. It's raw material. But this transmutation has a cost. Emotional detachment, when practiced long enough, begins to erode empathy. Musk understands emotion intellectually, he can map it, simulate it, even predict it, but he rarely abides by it. This distance gives him clarity in crisis but creates friction in connection. Those who work closest to him describe an intensity that borders on inaccessibility. He doesn't lead by comfort, he leads by gravitational force. People don't follow him because they feel seen, they follow him because he makes them feel necessary to something larger than themselves. He's not a tyrant in the classical sense, he's a conductor of chaos. Every project, every company, every idea is an orchestra of conflicting ambitions and fragile egos, and he stands at the center like a force of nature. He doesn't micromanage, he magnetizes. His energy is the field that holds everything together. Remove him, and the system destabilizes. This dependence is both his greatest power and his deepest vulnerability. Because if everything requires his presence to function, then nothing can survive without him. And this is where the boundary between man and myth begins to fracture. Musk's followers don't just believe in his products, they believe in him. He has become a symbol of defiance, of possibility, of the human will to transcend limits. But psychologically, symbols are double-edged. They elevate and isolate. The more people project onto him, the less space there is for the human being beneath the projection. Over time, the self becomes submerged under the expectations of the collective. Every tweet, every decision, every facial expression becomes public property. Inside that spotlight, the world sees a billionaire genius. But in the quiet moments, the ones without cameras or headlines, what remains? A man who cannot stop thinking. A mind that cannot stop building. Sleep becomes a negotiation, rest feels like betrayal. Because somewhere inside him lies a voice that whispers, if you stop moving, everything stops with you. That voice is not ambition, it's fear. The fear that if he ever allows himself to be ordinary, even for a moment, the extraordinary will collapse. This fear manifests as perfectionism disguised as innovation. He doesn't just want things to work, he wants them to redefine entire systems. Rockets must not only fly, they must land themselves. Cars must not only move, they must think. Humans must not only live, they must expand into space. It's not enough to improve the world must be rewritten. And in that rewriting lies his obsession with control. Because to Musk, progress is not measured in profit, but in precision. The universe must eventually obey. Yet beneath the titanium logic, there are moments, rare, fleeting, when the mask slips. In interviews, between words, in the long pauses before he answers questions about mortality or meaning, something human flickers through: fatigue, melancholy, the quiet realization that even the future he's building might not be enough. Because no matter how far he pushes the species, he cannot escape the one truth that binds all men, the impermanence of self. The rockets may outlive him, the algorithms may evolve beyond him, but the man himself remains finite. And that, perhaps, is the one variable he can't calculate away. He once said he fears that humanity will stagnate, that civilization will grow comfortable, stop striving, stop reaching. But maybe, beneath that statement, lies a more personal fear, that he will stagnate. That without the pursuit of the next impossible thing, he will vanish into the ordinary silence of mortality. For Musk, to stop creating is to cease existing. His immortality is not biological, it's industrial, technological, architectural. He is building his memory into the infrastructure of civilization. But the question that haunts every great architect of destiny eventually finds in two. When the future no longer needs you, who are you without it? When the machines think faster than your mind, when Mars becomes routine, when humanity adapts to the systems you built, what happens to the man who defined himself by revolution? The danger for Elon Musk is not failure. It is completion. Because once the future is achieved, the mind that has lived only for its conquest faces a void, a silence louder than any explosion. And perhaps that is why, even now, he keeps creating new storms. To stay one step ahead of the emptiness chasing him. The mind of Elon Musk is not at war with the world. It is at war with stillness. And stillness always waits. There is a moment in every visionary's life when their reflection begins to frighten them. When the image that once symbolized progress begins to look back as something else, something unrecognizable. For Elon Musk, that moment may already have arrived. Because behind the steel and circuitry, behind the rockets and factories, there is a man standing at the edge of a question that has haunted every conqueror of history. What happens when you've conquered everything except yourself? He once said he fears that humanity will never reach its potential, that we'll die on this planet, forgotten, consumed by triviality. But maybe that fear is personal. Maybe it's not about humanity at all. Maybe it's about him. Because beneath the language of mission and purpose lies a more fragile drive, the terror of insignificance. Musk doesn't want to save the world only because it's worth saving, he wants to save it because its survival would justify his existence. There's nothing cynical about that, it's profoundly human. The need to matter, to leave a mark that outlasts death, is one of the oldest impulses in the psyche. But in Musk, it's amplified to the level of cosmic responsibility. His ambitions aren't just professional, they're existential. Colonizing Mars isn't just exploration, it's exorcism. It's the attempt to outpace extinction, to wrestle with the inevitability of decay by constructing something eternal. Rockets become monuments against mortality. But the irony is cruel. The closer he comes to immortality, the more mortal he becomes. Every triumph carries new weight, every mistake new scrutiny. The man who once dreamed freely now lives under constant observation, a public consciousness that never sleeps. His mind, once limitless, is now the world's stage. And when the world watches, the dreamer becomes performance. His life becomes myth, his emotions data. There is no off switch. There is no sanctuary. Only velocity. Psychologically, this state produces what analysts call the savior complex, not narcissism, but an identity built on the illusion of indispensable purpose. When one believes their existence is crucial to humanity's fate, failure becomes apocalyptic. The pressure is unsustainable, yet the alternative, irrelevance, is worse. So the mind adapts by rejecting moderation entirely. Rest feels like betrayal. Doubt feels like death. Every waking moment becomes an act of justification, another invention, another company, another frontier. The engine must never stop. This is the paradox of the savior archetype. The more one tries to redeem the world, the further one drifts from it. Musk speaks of empathy for the species, but that empathy is abstract. It operates on the scale of planets, not people. He loves humanity as an idea, not as a collective of faces. He can imagine saving billions, yet struggles to connect deeply with one. That distance is not arrogance, it's exhaustion. His empathy has expanded so wide that it has thinned into atmosphere. And still, somewhere beneath the hyperlogic, there remains a child, the boy who looked up at the stars and saw escape. The same boy who was bullied, misunderstood, and dismissed for dreaming too big. The difference is that now, that boy commands empires. He can build the future he once imagined, yet the ache that fueled him hasn't gone away. It's evolved into restlessness, an existential itch that no success can scratch. Because what he's chasing isn't the future. It's peace. And peace is the one thing control can't manufacture. Musk's relationship with mortality is intellectual, not spiritual. He doesn't pray for transcendence, he designs it. Neuralink, artificial intelligence, interplanetary expansion, all are attempts to transfer the human soul into permanence. He treats death as a solvable equation, a glitch in the system. But in doing so, he risks something deeper, the disconnection from the very essence of what makes life meaningful. The finite nature of being is what gives emotion its gravity, love its urgency, and purpose its fire. To erase death is to erase meaning. He knows this. That's why his humor carries a strange melancholy, why his laughter sometimes sounds like defiance. He mocks catastrophe not because he underestimates it, but because he's already accepted its inevitability. He knows that all the rockets in the world can't stop entropy. The universe will fade, the stars will die, humanity will end. But in his mind, that doesn't mean defeat, it means duty. If the end is inevitable, then the only moral act is to delay it. To build. To strive. To push the boundary further into the dark. And yet, that duty isolates him. Because how do you share a burden like that? How do you talk about saving the species without sounding insane? He has become a figure too large for ordinary empathy and too human for divine reverence. People either worship him or despise him, and both reactions create the same outcome, distance. The more mythic he becomes, the lonelier he gets. The man who wants to connect every human brain to a shared consciousness is, perhaps, the most disconnected human alive. Psychologically, Musk lives at the intersection of transcendence and exile. His mind operates on frequencies few can follow, and that isolation is both his curse and his clarity. He sees patterns others ignore, dangers others deny, potential others fear. But awareness of that scale comes with an unbearable weight, the realization that no amount of innovation can fill the void between knowing the future and living in the present. He can see centuries ahead, but he cannot rest for a single day. This is what makes him both heroic and tragic. Heroic, because his vision expands the horizon of what humanity dares to imagine. Tragic, because that same vision has devoured his peace. He cannot stop, because the moment he does, the silence of his own thoughts would catch up, and in that silence, he would have to face the question he's been outrunning his entire life: what if all this, the rockets, the networks, the noise, is not about saving humanity, but about saving himself? He stands as a mirror for our species, a reflection of our collective hunger for control, our terror of insignificance, our desperate need to outlast time. We look at him not because we understand him, but because in his obsession, we recognize our own. He is humanity's most amplified archetype, the thinker who cannot sleep, the builder who cannot stop, the savior who cannot rest. And deep down, he knows that the line between creation and destruction has never been thinner. Because every time man tries to play God, he discovers that God was never missing, only hidden inside his own fear. And perhaps, in his race to control the future, Elon Musk is not defying destiny at all. Perhaps he is fulfilling it. There are minds that imagine the future. And then there are minds that force it into existence, no matter the cost. Elon Musk belongs to the latter. A man suspended between brilliance and exhaustion, between prophecy and burden, between human and myth. His mind doesn't rest, because rest feels like regression. He moves not because he loves motion, but because stillness terrifies him. And so, the world spins faster every time he thinks. To understand Elon Musk is to confront the most dangerous aspect of human intelligence, the belief that the future can be controlled. He doesn't hope for progress, he manufactures it. He doesn't believe in destiny, he edits it. Every rocket that pierces the sky, every chip that bridges mind and machine, every algorithm that reshapes human behavior is part of one vast psychological project, to make chaos obey. His true invention isn't technology, it's control. Control over entropy, over uncertainty, over death itself. But beneath the circuitry of ambition, there's something fragile, the echo of a child who once looked at the stars and saw not beauty, but escape. That child never left. He's still inside the man, hiding beneath equations and hardware, whispering in the language of fear. Fear of failure. Fear of irrelevance. Fear that even genius might not be enough to save a world that doesn't want to be saved. Every empire he builds is, in part, a fortress against that fear, a way to outrun the feeling of smallness that once haunted him. And yet, as his rockets ascend, as his machines learn, as his companies multiply, the irony grows heavier. The higher he climbs, the lonelier it becomes. Because when you reach a point where no one can understand the way you think, every conversation becomes translation. Every connection becomes performance. Musk doesn't live among people, he lives among probabilities. His companions are algorithms and engineers, his confessions typed into code. He can calculate the trajectory of Mars, but not the mystery of quiet companionship. Psychologically, he has achieved what philosophers once feared, the transformation of the human mind into an instrument of pure function. He has learned to suppress emotion, to quantify meaning, to treat feeling as data, useful only when it can be optimized. It makes him efficient, invincible, unstoppable. But it also leaves a question lingering in the silence after every achievement: who comforts the man who comforts no one? Because somewhere between the calculations and the cosmos, humanity fades. Not from cruelty, from speed. When you live 10 years into the future, the present becomes unbearable. To Musk, the now is never enough. The now is limitation. The now is decay. And yet, the future he chases will always remain slightly out of reach, the horizon that keeps receding as you approach. This is the silent tragedy of Elon Musk's psychology, that the man who seeks to liberate humanity from its limits has become imprisoned by his own. He can build neural networks that mimic the brain, but cannot reprogram his own restlessness. He can send machines to Mars, but cannot send himself anywhere beyond the gravity of obsession. He has become what he feared, a being defined not by choice, but by compulsion. And still, we watch. We admire. We envy. Because in him, we see the part of ourselves that wants to escape fragility, that wants to command the unknown, that wants to be God. But every time humanity gives one man the power to reshape the world, it is not only his soul that changes, it is ours. Musk is not merely a creator of machines, he is a mirror. A reflection of what happens when intellect evolves faster than empathy, when progress outpaces meaning, when the desire to save the species forgets the beauty of simply being human. He said once, "I would like to die on Mars, just not on impact." It sounded like a joke. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was the closest he's ever come to prayer, a hope that when the time finally comes, his death will have meaning. That even in his final act, he will be in motion, chasing the horizon, turning death itself into a mission. Because that's who he is, a man who cannot surrender, even to mortality. The billionaire who tried to redesign the soul of the species, not out of greed, but out of fear that the universe might forget us. And perhaps, in that obsession, he has ensured that it never will. But if there's one lesson hidden inside the circuitry of his genius, it's this: control is not creation. Perfection is not peace. Even the brightest minds must one day look inward and face the truth that the future cannot be conquered, only met, moment by moment, with all. Elon Musk will continue to build. That's his language, his therapy, his existence. But somewhere in the quiet between the rockets and the headlines, between the code and the chaos, there remains a question that even he cannot automate. When humanity finally reaches the stars, who will we have become to get there? If this journey into the mind of Elon Musk made you think, if it made you question power, control, or the fragile psychology behind human ambition, then let that reflection continue beyond this screen. Like this video if you believe that the human mind, in all its brilliance and darkness, deserves to be understood. Subscribe so you don't miss the next descent, the next mind will unravel, the next consciousness that shaped our world. And in the comments, tell me who you want to see next. Whose mind should we enter? Whose hidden thoughts should we dissect? Whose darkness should we bring into the light? Because every genius is a mystery. Every leader a labyrinth. And every mind, no matter how powerful, hides a secret waiting to be found.